Good day, everyone. I hope everyone is keeping well. Welcome back to the 2021 Nestbox series, and we have a jam-packed episode for you today. We've got Blue Tits vs. Fly, the sequel, and we also have Nesting Shuffle for days. And to top it all off, we end this episode with our first bit of nesting material. So in this episode, we're going to look at some of the behaviour leading up to that. But first, we're going to see our Blue Tit in action against the fly again. I don't know where all these flies are coming from, but we can see here that it's taking a walk on the floor. And little does it know, there's an incoming Blue Tit. And the fly seems to be putting up a valiant effort. And at this point I was thinking that the fly was going to get away with it. But our Blue Tit thankfully decides that he's not going to be outdone by a mere fly. And this actually has a surprise ending, because the fly does eventually get caught, but what happens really amazed me. Now we can see the fly at the base of the bird's tail. And they seem to be in a bit of a stalemate. But our Blue Tit catches it. But then look, it actually lets it go. And I would have thought this would have been an easy meal and surely good protein for the bird. But it decided to let it go for whatever reason. Maybe it was just full. But now getting back to some serious Nestbox action. We see Miley here arrive in on the 25th, bright and early. And I've noticed this in other years, when things are getting closer to nesting, they start arriving earlier and earlier. And you may notice in your own Nestbox that there may be a certain time of day that your birds tend to be more active. Now, every bird is different. I've noticed in Biddy and Miley's case, they always seem to arrive around the 7:30 mark in the morning, and they're most active then for a couple of hours, where the Nestbox is concerned, of course. Where if we look at the other pair, and this is the male of the other pair, and the female is going to arrive momentarily. And they always seem to arrive even later. Now they've arrived at 9, but it's usually around 10 o'clock that they've arrived. And I've noticed they are arriving less and less. And I'm sure Biddy and Miley are running into these two in their territory, and I'm sure they're clashing heads here and there. But I will say that Biddy and Miley are showing much more interest in the Nestbox than these two. They show up to the Nestbox much more frequently, and I think they are defending it a little bit more vigorously than the other pair. And with a female like Biddy, that's not really hard to imagine. We see Biddy doing a fine example of a nesting shuffle there, and this, as I said in the last video, is going to continue and get more vigorous and more frequent as the time for nesting draws near. And these are all great indicators that can help tell you if your birds in your Nestbox, if you happen to have some, are getting close to bringing in some nesting material. Now with that being said, there is no hard and fast set rule that will help you decide for sure when that's going to be. Some birds will bring in nesting material on and off through for weeks and weeks before they get really serious into building nests. I've also seen birds pick up a nest and have the full nest built within the week, or even less than that. And someone indeed was telling me in the comments that they were having a Blue Tit bring in moss and take it all back out again. And that has happened to me on previous years that I hadn't recorded, but years that I was just watching myself. And they do tend to do this quite often. Which always leads to the big burning question: why on earth are they filling the Nestbox up with moss and then taking it back out again? And this tends to be a behaviour seen early on in the nesting behaviour, and indeed the nesting season. But it also begs the question is, why do they do the nesting shuffle without the moss in there in the first place? And where the nesting shuffle is concerned, I always put it down to myself as a spatial thing to make sure the nest is suitable and get their bearings in how big the nest is in relation to a nest cup. But I don't think this is the full picture, as I do believe these birds are kind of fighting their own instincts. If you remember from last year, I was telling you about the fact that these birds really need to time their hatching of their chicks with the emergence of the green caterpillars on the mature oaks and other trees. So when we see blue tits and grey tits and any of the birds that nest in nest boxes bringing in moss, and they seem to be more playing at nest building rather than really trying to get the job done, this is what I think they're kinda trying to delay for. Now, I don't know if they're consciously making these decisions to do this. I would imagine it's a lot of natural cues of nature and the emergence of spring that kind of drives their instincts. And birds that weren't in the habit of listening to these instincts would have kind of died out a long time ago, as they wouldn't have really got their genes pushed on. And this kind of pushes us into the grounds of natural selection and everything like that, which I'm not going to get into too much now. And it has to be said that these are my own opinions. This is my take on it, in the sense of why these birds are doing this, because the reality is we just don't know, as no one knows the inside of a blue tit's mind and how they think and how they tick consciously. And this is the wonderful thing about the natural world. There's always just so much to learn and so much to know. And it seems to be, when you scratch the surface of this kind of stuff, it just shows how little you know more than anything else. So from the 26th to the 27th on, Biddy and Miley's behaviour very slightly changed. Now, I've sped this up to keep the video a little shorter, as they arrive numerous times throughout the day, usually in the morning, and they would arrive and a lot of nest and shuffle and a lot of nest and behaviour. And this was telling me that nest material time was drawing close, or at least the beginning of it. Biddy's getting much and more interested in building a nest. And I always find early on in the year, it's the males encouraging the females to check out the nest boxes, check out these sites. But then, as time goes on, it changes that the females are the ones kind of pushing for it as their natural instincts, I would say, clicking in. And these are behaviours that you can look out that can maybe help you indicate that the nesting period, in the sense of bringing nesting material, is drawing close. And you can use this as an indicator, as maybe when the birds are thinking of actually starting to bring in some nesting material. When you see more vigorous nesting shuffles, more frequent visits to the nest box, you can be sure that they are getting more and more interested in the thoughts of actually building the nest. And after that jam-packed week of activity, it finally brings us to today. We can see Biddy arrive, landing on the camera wire outside, using it as a perch. And it was Biddy arriving first, so Miley didn't arrive first. And this happens quite a few times, and is happening a little bit more regular. And I put it down to, as I said, that the female, biological clock is starting to tick, and she is the one getting more interested in the nesting now. But Miley is never too far away, and you can always tell that he's close from the little contact calls that they let out. Just look what happens now when he arrives outside. Biddy stops for seconds and does a few chirps, and he chirps back. And this, I'm sure, would be encouragement for her that it's all clear and safe outside. And this leads us to the pinnacle moment of Biddy bringing in some nesting material. She leaves now in the next few minutes, and we get a lovely shot because she lands on a branch just outside. It always amazes me just how agile these creatures are. But when she comes back, now keep your eyes peeled as you'll blink and you could possibly miss it. We have our first piece of nesting material, followed by a celebratory nesting shuffle. And she looks very proud of her one little piece of moss, but it is a start. And that was really all that she brought in all day that day. It wasn't much of a start, but it is certainly letting us know that she's planning on using this nest box, which I'm sure you know is always a relief. But I'm going to leave this video here as it's already quite long. But don't fret, the videos are going to be coming a lot more frequent as nesting material gets brought in. So you can expect a video, if material's being brought in, every couple of days at least. So thanks for watching as usual, and if you're enjoying the videos, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you.